Presidential hopeful Gavin Newsom finds himself under investigation for corruption. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. After 8 years of destroying California, Gavin Newsom has big dreams about one day destroying the entire country. Gavin is locked in on 2028, but a corruption probe into the incompetent California Democrat is the latest dagger to come his way, and there have been quite a few. He's got a lot of baggage trying to run with the state of California right now. Some dirty dealings are in Newsom's orbit, and for the past year, the DOJ has been looking into evidence of corruption that seems to be all around him, including his wife's taxes and his staff's dealings as well. One of these investigations began under Joe Biden, which makes Gavin's response to this probe all the more predictably ridiculous.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees. Not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president. Because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. One by one, anyone who has challenged Donald Trump has ended up on his hit list. And today, I proudly join that list.
He's certainly getting out in front of it, I guess. Gavin pretending there's no evidence of any wrongdoing that would elicit any kind of investigation into him. How entertaining it is to hear his fury when you learn about some of these details. And after he cheered the Biden administration targeting Trump over allegations that, until Trump, were routinely ignored in Washington, D.C., like classified documents, hush money, did they think Trump's DOJ would simply return to the way it was before justice was weaponized against him? Did Newsom really think he'd continue to get the Democrat free passes in this new age? These people don't realize that everything has changed now? Local news reporter Eitan Wallace from California posting from a source familiar with the investigation that several investigations into the Newsoms are ongoing. One related to Gavin's wife's taxes, another related to Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff and current staff members as well, all coming out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento. They originated through whistleblowers and local sources in California. Whistleblowers. We have a DOJ that no longer gives free passes to corrupt Democrats. That's the real story. It is not a weaponized DOJ. It's one that's just now doing its job wholly. But they're still crying that there's weaponization all over cable news. Take a listen.
Newsom and her husband is intended perhaps to send a message to him as a rival, but it certainly sends a message to any other dissenters, any other potential rivals, that this is what is waiting for you. If you go against Donald Trump, this is what you can expect.
It's basically a badge of honor for Gavin Newsom, and it's an in-kind donation to his 2028 presidential campaign. I think that Trump is going after him because he sees him as a threat, and it's only going to help him with voters.
Yeah. Okay. All that noise, and there's plenty more where that came from. Here's some reporting from their favorite newspaper, New York Times. For years, critics have raised the possibility of self-dealing, but no public evidence of wrongdoing by any of the entities tied to Miss Sybil Newsom has surfaced. That's his wife. And it remains unclear what precise issues and actions investigators have been asking questions about. But the Times points out Mr. Newsom has reported soliciting $4.3 million in donations to his wife's foundation, the California Partners Project, since the year 2020. So let's talk about this soliciting businesses and people that he governs, by the way, to donate to a pointless nonprofit that was founded by his wife. That's what's happening. This particular nonprofit cites its mission as equal pay, women on boards, and the well-being of kids, which is oddly broad and unspecific in its goals. And that's the point. It kind of sounds like the Human Fund from Seinfeld, right? Costanza, money for people. That's exactly the same thing. It's a slush fund for her personal life, as most BS nonprofits tend to be. Here's Gavin's wife explaining her passion for all of this in her insufferable way.
My work has always been centered on women and centering women, telling their stories, uplifting them, creating economic access and opportunities for them. We've been able to really lean into kind of awakening folks' consciousness, shifting attitudes and behaviors, and then moving corporations' best practices by basically demonstrating all of the wins and what's possible when you have women with seats at the tables of power.
She's doing nothing. It's not centered on women, it's centered on her. There's so many of these ridiculous NGOs. It's so pretentious, and it's usually self-serving, and that's what this is, except this time, you've got a little corruption with it as well. Gavin soliciting millions to that, what she just explained, while claiming that he is squeaky clean. Have you ever heard of what's called a behested payment? Behested payments are donations to foundations or NGOs at the request of an elected official. Gavin Newsom is allowed to tell a major organization lobbying him for some kind of favor that they can donate to a foundation that he or his wife have created. Yeah. Behested payments are technically legal in California because of course they are, right? But they might not be the way Gavin Newsom is doing them. A great example of this from the Washington Free Beacon, February 2024, Newsom behested $99,000 from the Central Valley Community Foundation to his wife's California Partners Project. 9 days later, Newsom awarded a $14 million no-bid contract to the Central Valley Community Foundation. So you give $100 grand to my wife's BS nonprofit that we use as a slush fund, and then I'll give you this, no-bid contract. Yeah, that's fine, right? I see no issue with that. Also in 2024, same year, Newsom behested a $25,000 contribution from CVS, the pharmacy chain, at the same time as the pharmacy giant lobbied Newsom's office against a bill that would have cracked down on pharmacy benefit managers. CVS cut its check to the California Protocol Foundation. That is a charity that happens to pay for Newsom's out-of-state and overseas travel. So every time Gavin wants to go to Paris and sit in a $20,000 first-class seat, those are the people that pay. Newsom vetoed that same bill that CVS was lobbying for just a few weeks later. A CVS spokesman praised him, and the company's stock spiked nearly 3% at the open of the markets the very next day. Gavin gets greased, CVS gets a stock bump, and the only downside is Californians just have to pay, higher out-of-pocket costs for pharmaceutical drugs. What a great guy, right? And that's somehow legal, we're supposed to think? Okay. Let's see. Gavin Newsom is clearly willing to trade political favors for money that benefits himself and benefits his wife. Right now, the DOJ is looking into what else Gavin Newsom is up to. All right, Steve Hilton is a Republican candidate for California governor trying to replace Gavin Newsom this fall. A good person to talk to about this. Let's start with behested payments, which are a big thing in California, Steve, California politics. Tell us about this. You can solicit, I guess, money from an organization, from a business. You can do them a favor, and they just send that money through an NGO that you prefer, like your wife's nonprofit?
It's incredible, Rob. It's literally legalized corruption. It's astonishing, but that is the law, and this is the kind of thing you get when a party's been in power for 16 years and thinks it can get away with anything. So a politician can phone a business that they regulate. In this case, you've seen examples like PG&E, one of the big utilities in Northern California. The governor phones them up and says, I'd like you to give some money to this organization that I think is a good cause. Happens to be, in this case, one run by his wife. And then she's paid from that organization. It's completely outrageous. And there are many other examples of Gavin Newsom and other politicians in California carrying out this kind of legalized corruption, where you get a favor done for you, and then you give a favor to the business that's doing the favor. It's completely outrageous. And I've said very clearly that I would stop it.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to figure out is if it is legal, then I wonder, this can't be is this what the DOJ is looking at? What do you think they're actually looking at here? That obviously is very corrupt, seems dirty as hell. But if that's not illegal, then what do you think the DOJ is looking at with Gavin Newsom?
That's the question everyone's trying to answer here. And the reporting that I don't know. I'm running my own campaign. Right. Today, I announced my plan to make your first 150 grand tax-free in California.
Love that.
The reporting in California that we've heard so far is that the investigation is covering, first of all, the existing corruption case involving Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff and my opponent, Javier Becerra.
Right.
And money that was illegally taken from Becerra's campaign account, funneled through another consulting firm run by Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff and into the pocket of Becerra's chief of staff himself. Another story is that there's a separate investigation into tax payments involving the Newsoms. That's based on whistleblowers from within California. But all the serious reporters in Sacramento are saying that the origin of this is within California, nothing to do with President Trump.
That's the interesting thing, is that a lot of people are indicating that some of these investigations into Newsom started actually under the Biden DOJ. I want to just play you Adam Schiff's take on this before I let you go. Take a listen.
You can't tell me this is a pure coincidence that they decide to go after a Democratic candidate, likely candidate for president, and his family, that this was purely random. The president makes it clear this is deliberate. And I think people are growing numb to this extraordinary abuse of the Justice Department.
Extraordinary abuse of the Justice Department. Do you remember him talking about all the various cases against Trump just a couple years ago and how he said everything was exactly the opposite? Go ahead.
It's amazing. They're totally shameless, aren't they? You know, lawfare is fine when they do it, but when someone else has perhaps a legitimate cause for an investigation, suddenly it's all political. It's completely unbelievable. But this is, again, it's the arrogance of these people. This is the attitude you get from people who've been in power for too long without any kind of accountability. They think they can get away with anything.
Yeah, well said. Steve Hilton, good to see you. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Rob. Great to be with you.
Another big story tonight is this huge terror plot that targeted the UFC White House fight on Sunday that yours truly attended and was thwarted by the FBI just days before. 5 arrests happening today. Investigators identifying 23 potential plotters. The plan was enormous. Try to drone bomb this thing and then shoot people as they ran out. Tyson Proper, seen here, the first arrested. His mom called the cops over concern of his recent conduct. Good on her. His parents saying he spent thousands on firearms, thousands on rounds of ammunition, tactical gear, was spending most of his time online, likely speaking to his co-conspirators. They were armed up to the teeth. The group planned to fly drones packed with bombs and explosives over that arena, blow some stuff up, force everybody to evacuate, and then they were going to have a planned, pre-staged sniper team in place right where the evacuation occurred to start picking off what they consider to be high-value targets, politicians, wealthy audience members, as the evacuation was underway. This was a hell of a plan. The crowd was packed, of course, as you know, with the president, cabinet members, media, celebrities, billionaires. It was a who's who of MAGA and Trump, and the president was asked about it today.
Were you briefed on the attack plans for the UFC event at the White House? There was, the FBI thwarted an attack.
I haven't heard about it, no. But I watched, the attack that I watched were the fighters. And he saw it too, by the way. He was sitting back home in his beautiful palace and he was watching it.
It's surreal how casual he is about it, but they shoot at him about every few weeks at this point, so I guess I can understand that. Jonathan Gilliam is a former FBI agent, retired Navy SEAL, Matt Schlapp, CPAC chairman. Good to have you both here. They foiled this thing, Jonathan, 4 days before the event. What do you make of this? Was this a real plan?
Well, I think they were moving towards something. Let me just say this. Saying was it a real plan, that's kind of hard to validate, but I will say that it appears their intent was real. And their intent, and they're showing action or maneuvering to get to a point where they could carry this out. That's enough for a warrant. That goes beyond just somebody sharing an opinion, which I think is what you're going to hear with a lot of these individuals saying that it was just free speech and they were disgruntled. But I think, you know, Rob, one of the things that is most troubling about this for me is that you cannot directly point at leftists in this particular instance.
Yeah.
A lot of these people kind of sound like libertarians. And the problem with this is that libertarians, like leftists, tend to put all their weight on issues that they think, if it's not this way, we're going to burn the house down.
Yeah.
And that opens people up to being programmed. And I think it's very dangerous. And I think the programming is coming from the same programmers that have manipulated the left. And that's Iran, Russia, China,
Right.
Cuba. These
Right.
people are all involved in this. Globalists the same way.
When you look at them, I didn't see they didn't look like, lefties to me either. They look like anarchist libertarians, like, as you said. It kind of feels like where this was coming from. Matt, Tyson Proper, the first arrested, told investigators it was designed to jumpstart a revolution here in the United States. And just speak to that.
Yeah, well, we already have a revolution that's going on in the United States, and it's a great pushback towards the desire to make America, separate from her founding and embrace Marxism. And, this is a highly charged political time. Mercy and I were reminiscing today that we ran out of the White House on 9/11. And that White House is a flashpoint for political strife, not only here, but around the world. And I just think, look, first of all, I applaud all the people like Kash Patel and Todd Blanche that foiled this. I think it's also a good lesson that all of us who think that we're talking on WhatsApp or Signal and that no one can listen, it's a good lesson that sometimes I'm glad the bad guys can't hide from us. So good job to the authorities.
Yeah, I got 10 seconds, but Jonathan, I feel like somebody might have been, it might have been some kind of FBI insider inside of that group or something like that. I'm trying to figure out how they did foil it.
Good mom.
I really hope that there was somebody inside, because the fact is, they say there's like 25 people involved, but only 5 have been arrested. And then Kash Patel goes out and makes this announcement.
Yeah.
What happened to the day and age where we keep these cases closed and sealed until they are solved? I do have a little bit of a problem with that, but I hope that they have some sources that were within and were able to kind of give them a heads up.
Yeah, I feel like it was more than just mom, that maybe mom is what they're saying because they don't want to go over the fact that they had an insider. I don't know that, but that's just how it feels. Jonathan Gilliam, Matt Schlapp, good to see you guys. Thanks so much. Up next, Senator Rick Scott on the SAVE Act and the clear resistance from the Senate to do something that 80% of Americans want. And then later in News from the Left, George Conway running for Congress with the most aggressive anti-Trump ad we have ever seen.
It's me, George Conway. I cost you $88 million, and I've only just gotten started.
If you want to be ready for summer, now's the time to call Sono Bello. Sono Bello helped me target the spots that diet and exercise never could.
Sono Bello gave me my bikini body back.
At Sono Bello, our expert surgeons remove stubborn fat permanently and tighten loose skin in one visit with less downtime. Every treatment plan is personalized for your body, your goals, and the results that you want to achieve.
Walking around this summer with my shirt off, it's the best decision I've ever made.
I see my spark back, and I am so glad that I went with Sono Bello because they have truly changed my life.
With over 50,000 five-star reviews, Sono Bello is America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
I love wearing a bikini again and not having to cover up.
See what's possible for you. Schedule your free consultation today. I got my summer body at Sono Bello.
Get your summer body back. Do this for you.
And our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today. Call now or go to sonobello.com for your free personalized consultation. It's your life. Live it beautifully.
The Dutton Ranch. We're back in business.
You heard right. Let's go to work. I'm glad you're making friends, honey.
You're every bit as advertised.
You're damn right he is.
Fighting a good fight, buddy.
As history's preeminent expert on emergency communication, I fully endorse Rapid Radios. They are the only nationwide license-free push-to-talk walkie-talkies without any monthly fees. That's right, you get access to most carriers' networks without a contract. With Rapid Radios, you can communicate instantly from this Washington to that one. Isn't that right, George?
Darn straight, and I don't lie.
Now I know what you're thinking. I don't need no fancy highfalutin walkie-talkie. I've got a cell phone. Cell phones are notoriously unreliable during emergencies and when you're in the middle of nowhere. Plus, Rapid Radios are great for remote adventures, emergency preparedness, and workplace communications, and for keeping in touch with your loved ones.
Hey, Pa. Over.
You make me so proud, son. Over. Get your family connected with Rapid Radios today.
Right now, every order includes over $300 in free gear. Go to rapidradios.com. Rapid Radios. Communication redefined.
There is no widespread voter fraud. It is only a figment of the imagination of Trump and others who follow that conspiracy theory.
Okay. California's Democratic Attorney General Rob Bonta there says there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud in his state, while refusing at the same time to let the federal government audit his state's ridiculous and dirty voter rolls. Harmeet Dillon at the DOJ leading the charge to clean state voter rolls all throughout the country, replying, "How do you know? You don't audit them, and you're obstructing the federal government's audit, Rob. What are you hiding?" First Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, Bill Asaley, that covers Los Angeles, writing to Bonta, he's acknowledging that voter fraud does exist in California by his denial to allow that audit, saying, let's settle this once and for all by allowing the federal audit we've been seeking for more than a year. Senator Rick Scott is all over this as well, and he joins us now. We just saw that bizarre and kind of ridiculous comeback from Nithya Raman over Spencer Pratt, one that really made no sense when you looked at how the absentee came in for Karen Bass, the other Democrat that's just like her, in those post-election day mail-in ballots. What are your thoughts here?
Well, first off, when somebody says there's absolutely no voter fraud, that's a complete lie. Yeah. We know people have done it. They've done it, forever. And we have to stop it. It's not fair to the voters in this country that don't want their votes diluted. And why wouldn't you want somebody to come in and make sure you're doing a good job? I mean, we have, like when you run companies, you have outside auditors that come in and they're giving you, their assessment of how you're doing. Here's what we know. We know there's plenty of evidence that they went and paid people on Skid Row in LA for their votes. We got people that are willing to do affidavits. We have people that are willing to. There's people already, signed affidavits that they did it. So, I mean, there's clearly voter fraud. And so if we want people to feel comfortable about elections, if we want to make sure the people that win elections actually win elections, we have to go look at this stuff. Now, I think we have to pass the Save America Act. You have to have a voter ID. Right. You have to have an ID for everything else in life. You have to have an ID to vote.
Let's talk about Let's talk about that for just a second, because that's where I wanted to go next because of this and because of the fact that California sends a mail-out ballot to every single voter, regardless if they want one or not. So there's just ballots all over the place in California. Let's talk about the SAVE Act. There's zero will from the leadership in the Senate to do this. We're very aware of that now, despite it being so broadly popular among Americans. Can you give us some insight into why that is, what the real story is with the SAVE Act inside the Senate?
Well, here's what we have to do. I mean, we've taken some votes, but we have to either, really put the effort in to get these things done. That means we have to do what happened with the Civil Rights Act. Back in the 60s, we said, we're going to vote on this, and we're going to keep talking about this until we pass it. And they did pass it, even though they didn't have the support when they started. Or we have to break it down into smaller bills. Let's do a vote just on voter ID. Let's do a vote on separate vote on saying you have to be American, you have to prove you're American to register to vote. You have to share your data with the federal government. We can do a variety of different votes and see how we can get there. But we have to do it. We have to protect our elections. We have to secure our border. Now we have to secure our elections.
Is it a tough thing to talk about, considering you've got Trump on one side and kind of the will of the people on one side? You have your leader, Thune, on the other side of it. I can't imagine this is a comfortable conversation to have.
Well, I'm going to continue to fight for it, and I think I'm optimistic that we'll eventually get this done. It might be done in pieces, but we're going to get this done. We're not, I mean, people like Mike Lee, Ron Johnson and I, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep fighting.
Okay. Well, I love that. I appreciate you coming on, Senator. Good to see you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Okay. It's Election Day in Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, and Washington, D.C., and in California, where they have a special primary happening to replace Eric Swalwell. He won't be missed. In D.C., a crowded Democrat mayoral primary, 7 candidates vying to succeed Mayor Muriel Bowser. The district is ranked choice voting. Frontrunners going into today were former D.C. Councilmember Kenyon R. McDuffie and current Councilmember Janice Lewis George, who is another wacko communist. They're calling her kind of D.C.'s Mamdani. In Georgia, a GOP runoff for governor. Trump backed current Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and businessman Rick Jackson. And also in Georgia, we're watching a few races, including Trump-backed Michael Collins runoff primary, Senate primary runoff as well. Rob Astorino is at the Collins watch party tonight in Jackson, Georgia. Why is this a race to watch, Rob?
Oh, this is a huge one, Rob, because the winner has to take on Jon Ossoff, who, you know, was elected 6 years ago. He's a one-termer right now, far left, not really in step with Georgia voters, but he got in there during the, you know, the Trump years and the controversies with the runoffs back then. Collins has the Trump endorsement. He just got it on Sunday. Whether it makes a difference or not, if it's too late, don't know. But he's got a lead right now with about 15% in. Derek Dooley's dad, Vince, legendary here in Georgia. He led the Georgia Bulldogs with Herschel Walker to the national championship way back when. Dooley's running the outsider campaign. The subplot in this, Rob, is Governor Kemp against President Trump. You know, they got that little rivalry going.
Of course.
Dooley has been totally behind Kemp, and Kemp vice versa, and Trump, of course, with Mike Collins. So we'll see who wins this, but $32 million is waiting for Jon Ossoff to start raining down on the winner of this.
Yeah, they got to. I mean, how are there 2 Democrat senators in the state of Georgia? I mean, that is just so surreal. Rob Astorino, we got to make a change on that. Good to see you, Rob. Thanks so much. All right, Trump taking heavy criticism on this pending Iran deal. We're going to dissect it from all angles. Up next with Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg.
There's a rhythm that picks up when life slows down. When you have ATTR cardiac amyloidosis, there's still beauty to tend, still joy to gather and give. It's about living for what you love and not letting ATTR-CM define who you are. Attruby is an oral medicine proven to help adults with ATTR-CM live longer and have fewer hospitalizations due to heart issues. Attruby helps slow the progression of ATTR-CM. Tell your doctor if you're pregnant, plan to become pregnant, or are breastfeeding, and about the medications you take. The most common side effects were mild and included diarrhea and abdominal pain. If you have ATTR cardiac amyloidosis, ask your cardiologist if Attruby is right for you. Time to get busy living.
I still love to surf, snowboard, and of course skate. So I take Cunol Magnesium to support my muscle and bone health. Cunol's high absorption magnesium glycinate helps me get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Today, there's a special opportunity to double your gift's impact. Call now, and your gift's impact will be doubled.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, And we must reach them now, before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people.
We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
Thanks to generous fellowship partners. Call now and your gift's impact will be doubled.
It's a very important document, and unlike Obama, who could have destroyed the Middle East with a horrible JCPOA, it is the worst agreement. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. Mine is a wall against a nuclear weapon. But I'll go over the document with the media in a couple of days.
All right, so that's the president chatting with Gulf state leaders at the G7 in France earlier today, talking about this deal to end the war with Iran, which everyone's trying to figure out, right? A deal that he says is nothing like Obama's JCPOA because that was a road to a nuclear weapon. He says this is a wall against a nuclear weapon. So we're going to talk about that. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg is back with us tonight. And, sir, it's good to see you again. Oil prices plummeting, the stock market's booming. That's the upside of all this, and we know that. But this deal is facing some pretty tough criticism, although it hasn't technically yet been seen. What are you thinking?
Well, again, and thanks for having me, Robert. It's good to be with you. Look, we really don't know what it says because I'd say everybody just relax, chill out till we physically see the document, and none of us have seen it at all. But and the reason why you got to go back is why the president was concerned about the JCPOA or JCPOA is because we don't want another nation to go nuclear on us. We already have 9 nuclear nations. You don't need a 10th, especially in the Middle East, because if the Iranians would have gotten one, the Saudis would have gotten one, the Emiratis would have gotten one, and you just don't want to go there because you treat a non-nuclear nation much different than you treat a nuclear nation. And you know where the president was coming from was not diplomacy at the start, but from strength. We're going to show you that we can beat you whenever we want to do it. And we're not going to just talk about it, but we're going to use combat power to prove that. So when you go back to JCPOA, that was in 2015, it's much different than the JCPOA that the president is going to try to get some nuclear deal done now. Let me give you an example. With JCPOA in 2015, there were sunset clauses, amount of centrifuges they could have, that would expire. The fact they could enrich uranium, that would have expired this year, and they could have gone anywhere they wanted to well into the future, and you don't want that to happen. So what I'm saying is he actually firewalled us, the United States, for future generations, and not allowing them to either have the centrifuges or the enriched uranium. And now it's going to be an interesting point, because now they're going to have to negotiate. And they've got 2 tough negotiators with Zarif and Arachi. And Arachi kind of wrote the book on negotiations for the Middle East. And he calls it marketplace negotiations. If anybody's ever been to the Middle East and tried to buy a rug, you know, you go in, there's no price tag. You start debating that right away from the front. And that's how they approach negotiations. They call it the Eastern side of negotiations.
Do you think
I don't know if our people are ready for that. It's going to be a really interesting view over the next 60 days where they want to go to. But again, I would say on actually what we're looking at is we don't know because we haven't seen it. The other thing, besides the negotiations, remember the Shiite population, and there's 2 branches of Islam. You got the Sunni and the Shia. And the Shia predominantly are coming out of Iran. They've got a philosophy called taqiyya. Taqiyya is basically like you and I are infidels to them. It's okay to lie to us and actually maneuver around us. So these guys are going to start with a face of duplicity, and we better be ready
General,
for that.
I want to just ask you, I mean, when you look at this, do you think that is there a pressure that the White House is feeling to get something done, to change this situation, to change the status quo? Do you believe that there's some kind of pressure that they felt to bring us to this moment right here?
Well, I think there's pressure. It's internal pressure. The president wants to get a deal. I think it's going to be, but he's not going to be forced into it. As he said, he's going to take time to do it. But the pressure, I think, is for the Iranians, because they haven't calculated that they've got a guy like Trump in the White House. You know, they looked at previous presidents who just talked about some type
because
of
not to cut you not to cut you off, but I mean, if we're shutting down, you know, if the blockade is going to end, and we're saying they're not getting anything, well, obviously they're getting something, because that blockade was costing them $500 million a day, right? It was a tremendous amount of money. That's going to be opened up to them now. So that's giving them something before they really do anything.
Well, we don't really know, because we haven't seen the document.
Yeah.
And that's one of the questions I tell everybody, just relax a little bit.
Until we see it.
Let's see what it says. When we see it, Donald Trump's not going to go for a bad deal. The cautionary note is you can't trust these guys.
Yeah.
As long as you've got a theocratic government in charge, which they are, who chant death to America, you're going to have a problem. And the advisory condition I'd make is that this will not be an easy negotiations. And you need to understand the guys you're negotiating with. They wrote the book on negotiations, but they're called marketplace negotiations, and that they are not Americans. They're not Jeffersonian Democrats. You better be ready for whatever they throw at you.
I understood why we went in. I understood why this nation, which is so inherently evil and terror supporting, needed to be suppressed. Why this had to happen, whatever it was. You hope that this gets done the right way. And I also understand why nobody was willing to do this job before, because you're dealing with such a tough nation. Let's talk about the $300 billion fund that everyone's talking about right now. The Financial Times first report that the administration is considering this $300 billion fund for Iran if this deal is upheld. Trump calling this fake news, denying what he calls a rumor earlier today in France. Here he is.
We pay nothing. We don't pay. There was some statement, we're going to spend $300 billion. No, we're not. We're allowed to go and invest if we wanted to someday in the future. We have no obligation whatsoever.
So there's the president denying. I want to just show how J.D. Vance explained it when he got the same question about this earlier this week.
The Iranians are saying that they're going to have access to a $300 billion reconstruction fund. True or false?
That's the sort of thing they could have access to, funded by the Gulf Coast Coalition, so long as they honor their end of the obligation. We absolutely are open to the Gulf Coast countries investing in the reconstruction of Iran, but only if Iran ends their nuclear program, ends their enriched stockpile of material, and is really open to an inspections and enforcement regime that gives the American people confidence they're never going to have a nuclear weapon.
So Vance says if they play by all the rules, if they comply completely and they make a change that we can legitimately find and see, that eventually down the line these Gulf states could invest in the reconstruction of that country. Our CEO put out an op-ed with Newsmax.com saying that say no to the $300 billion Iran Reconstruction Fund. What do you make of this, of the idea of just even allowing for such a vast amount of money to be poured into this country?
Well, I think the key word there that was used by Vice President Vance, and implied by the president, was if they actually comply with all the directives, which we don't know. Then we are open to having support the Gulf nations to do something like that. And they're looking at a lot of money there. I'm very concerned about it, because if they get the money, they can build in the future. But that's one of the reasons why the president's been so hard on them. Why he's went after their military. We'll have overhead visuals of what's going on. Why we need to get rid of the enriched uranium. The IAEA can take it, or somebody else can take it. Because once you get to, where we were pretty sure they were at was 60% uranium enriched. That to 80% or 90% weapons grade, it's just a matter of, some say, days, not weeks. And then you have their capability to develop a weapon. So I don't know what they're going to basically give them on the Gulf states are going to support it. But I think the key word that Vice President Vance said was, well, if they comply. That's going to be really interesting to see once they come up with an agreement.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of speculation. Again, we don't see this until potentially Friday, and it's hard to cover this with speculation, and you're aware of that too. General, it's good to see you, though. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be with you.
One of the weirder things we've seen since the Knicks championship run, communist politicians just showering praise and love on athletes making $40 million a year. Do they not see the irony? Up next with Congresswoman Paulina Luna.
When you're in the news business, it never stops. News is always breaking, and it's my job to get you the news, no spin, no BS. If you don't believe us, just watch us.
Watch Finnerty, weeknights, only on Newsmax.
Rob trusts Prevagen for his brain, and this is his story.
I'm Rob. I run a sanctuary for tigers in Southern California. I've been working with tigers for over 30 years. I found that I was taking various supplements for my physical health. I wanted to take something for my brain as well. After taking Prevagen, I felt more confident. I felt more in the moment. I stopped taking Prevagen for a while, and I noticed a difference. I got right back on it. Prevagen really works.
Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years.
This little light of mine in the dark found a hopeful sign.
For those with depression not getting enough relief from their antidepressant, adding Caplyta can help you let in the light, providing greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone. And unlike some medications, Caplyta is also proven to deliver significant symptom relief from both bipolar 1 and 2 depression.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Daddy.
That was us over 10 years ago from the LifeVac's first commercial in our living room.
Now LifeVac has saved 5,000 lives all over the world. All these people were saved by LifeVac.
Thousands of people choke to death every year, 1 child every 5 days.
These tragedies don't have to happen. LifeVac is the only FDA-authorized anti-choking device. Please consider protecting yourself, your family, your community. Go to lifevac.com today.
Thanks, Dad.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Do you know which investment has outperformed almost every other asset class since the beginning of last year? And that Goldman Sachs research is now forecasting to reach further heights. That's right, it's gold. Central banks around the world continue to buy gold at record levels due to economic turmoil, foreign conflicts, and a weakening U.S. economy plagued by debt. If you're concerned how to protect yourself as our financial system weakens, our team at Swiss America has a solution. For over 40 years, we've helped people just like you purchase precious metals for home delivery and for your IRAs. Don't miss out before this next big price jump. Call or text Swiss America at the number on your screen to receive your free portfolio review and a copy of The Timeless Truth About Gold and Silver. Let us show you how easy it is to safeguard your money. Call or text Swiss America today.
Go New York, go New York, go!
Do you mind if we make one more?
So I find this to be very irksome. Here in New York, you got Mamdani very oddly attaching himself to the New York Knicks as if he's the reason that the Knicks won the finals for the first time in 53 years, borrowing the success of the team, trying to use it for himself politically, fresh off of their NBA championship. It is quite surreal in so many ways to see something like this, especially a communist so giddy over athletes who make $40 million a year by being the best of the best of the best through competition and all of these ideals that he loathes so much to his core. Yet he's a sports fan, and he's not alone.
This is a very exciting time. It's a very exciting time.
This obnoxious woman here is Wisconsin Democrat State Rep Francesca Hong, who is running for governor. Also another communist who has to post this ridiculous video on X cheering for the Knicks, a total attention-seeking, obnoxious politician. There are so many of these. Oh, I'm dancing. This is all so organic. I'm not doing this for the camera. New York City elected a socialist, she writes on X, and the Knicks won their first championship in 53 years because, of course, it's because of Mamdani, right? Imagine what we could do with a socialist governor in Wisconsin. She's an idiot. And as these people try to attempt this, you've got the finals MVP, Jalen Brunson, mocking the New York taxes that Mamdani says so desperately need to be raised.
I have nothing against Texas. I love Texas. I miss the Texas taxes.
Yeah, of course he does. You think these people vote for Mamdani as he cheers for them? Congresswoman Paulina Luna joins us now. Good to have you back on. You know, how cringy is it to watch Mamdani try and take the credit for the Knicks?
Super cringy. In fact, though, I have to deal with it up here on the Hill. As you know, they like to pretend that they don't like money, but many of my fellow socialists are thoroughly enjoying being fully invested in the stock market and benefiting greatly from capitalism.
Yeah, and then you had Hakeem. Remember Hakeem's outfit when the Knicks were on the run, what he had to wear, how obnoxious it was. I want to show you this one. The drama with the left-wing SPLC just keeps getting better and better. Top official with the Southern Poverty Law Center accused of funneling $1.2 million in donor money to an informant in the National Alliance White Supremacist Group. We learned this after the DOJ went after the SPLC for funneling all this cash to the hate groups that they claim to be fighting. The Post reporting the indictment refers to her as employee number 2. It's supposed to be a woman named Heidi Byrick, seen on the screen here. She was full on having an affair with a white supremacist neo-Nazi while being one of the executives at the SPLC, which is a radical left-wing group that claims to be fighting white supremacy. Could you ever imagine a story like this?
Well, you know, Democrats did historically fight to keep slavery. So, yes, unfortunately, history does repeat itself. But, you know, she's quite the looker, so I can't imagine how that ended up happening.
Yeah. What an affair. It's like it's kind of like Romeo and Juliet, you know. It's like they shouldn't be together. And then they somehow, I mean, it's just so bizarre. I got to give you one more on the. It's amazing, right? That's an amazing story. Scandal in Alaska. Top election official ruling that retired teacher Dan J. Sullivan, pictured on the left, disqualified from running as a Republican against GOP Senator Dan S. Sullivan for Senate. Clearly some trickery by Alaska Democrats trying to knock Sullivan out of the primary there for an easy road. The senator reacting, this guy was obviously in it to rig it, not in it to win it. So they went out and found a guy with the exact same name to confuse voters on the ballots. And these people tell us, that they expect us to believe that they would never try and toy with an election in some way that was not up to par?
Yeah, look, it's completely not right that they're doing that. But then again, every single day, you know, we have one of these issues. It's an 80-20 issue. It's called Voter ID, Save America Act. And yet Democrats in the Senate and even Leader John Thune is refusing to bring it up for a vote. And so I'm not surprised by that. But, you know, unfortunately, Democrats are very cunning in how they do try to interfere in elections. Yep. And what I will say is that we need voter ID, top issue in the country.
I totally agree. I got 15 seconds left. Why is Thune blocking this?
You know, I don't know. But what I will say is that there's been some interesting receipts, some of his family members potentially working with left-wing organizations, but there's zero excuse for it. The American people want it overwhelmingly, and he needs to do it. And if he doesn't, it's time for him to find a new job.
Well said. Paulina Luna, Congresswoman, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
In the land of Democrats, it's now fashionable to root against this country, even in sport. That's up next in News from the Left.
Oh, I like Mexico.
I'm rooting for Senegal.
Mike Hammond of Signal Relief. We've helped nearly 700,000 feel relief in their back, shoulders, and knees with our technology. But for many of us, it's our feet that hurt. And when they hurt, our walks get shorter, activities are skipped, and the moments we love start slipping away. That's why we created the Signal Step, a patent-pending insole built using the same proven technology people already trust from Signal Relief. Signal uses no drugs. There's nothing on the market like it. It's relief without the side effects. It's reusable, fits virtually into any shoe, and in a recent study, over 85% felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Feel relief with every step. If you're hurting, go to signalstep.com and get relief today.
Our nurse-led care anticipates needs before they're voiced. From skilled nursing to companion care that renews the soul.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
I was tired of sitting on the sidelines. Now, thanks to Jointivia, I'm back in the swing of things. Wait, $70 for a refill?
You gotta try Single Care. Just look up your prescription, show the coupon at the pharmacy, and save.
Really?
Really. Single Care crushes the cost of my prescription, almost as much as I'm crushing Chad.
Unbelievable. See why more people are saving with Single Care. Common side effects include shockingly lower prices, excessive fist bumps, and humbling guys named Chad.
Stop trusting foreign antivirus to defeat foreign-made ransomware. American-made PCmatic protects your family, your home, and your workplace. Go to PCmatic.com. Built by Americans to protect America.
Summer is coming fast. Now you can get your best summer body in just one visit to Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
This summer, I'm excited to not be covered up.
I've got abs again. Sono Bello put me in the right spot to just feel good again.
I feel beautiful. I went from this to this in just one visit.
I feel confident.
Micro laser technology permanently removes stubborn fat, tightens and tones skin in just one visit with less downtime.
My shirts were extra large. Now I'm wearing a bathing suit. It changed my life.
There's no more frustration, just permanent results.
My stomach is gone.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 5-star reviews and expert surgeons. Call now for your personalized consultation. That's over a $250 value. Free. Easy monthly payment options make your best body more affordable than ever. Step into summer with confidence. Call Sono Bello today.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. George Conway, the Oompa Loomp, running for a nice, safe congressional seat in Manhattan. He just needs to get through the primary because the primary is the election in this one. And so the biggest anti-Trump idiot wins, hence this ad.
Hi, Donald. It's me, George Conway. I cost you $88 million, and I've only just gotten started. But the only thing your name is going to be left on when I'm done with you is the orange jumpsuit you're going to have to wear in prison. And you see that building back there? That's where we're going to hold your third and final impeachment trial. The one that's going to put you away for good. And I'm going to enjoy every minute of that.
That's a political ad. Oompa loompa doopa dee doo. Conway is... I got nothing. I tried to do that. I should have written that. Next up, in New York, Congressman Adriano Espaillat and his primary challenger, Daria Avila Chevalier, revealing who they're rooting for in the World Cup as Democrats.
World Cup is here. The first match this weekend at MetLife Stadium taking place. Who are you rooting for?
I like Mexico.
Mexico. There you go.
I'm rooting for Senegal.
Just get out of the country. Leave. Go anywhere else. Get the hell out. As an American, how ridiculous is that? How embarrassing is that? And it's so fashionable. Oh, wow. Who roots for America anymore? We just want to run America. We don't want to root for it. We want to destroy it. They even admit it right there. Just so pitiful. And these people lead us. And finally, Major League Baseball issuing a warning to 4 San Francisco Giants pitchers after 3 players wrote Bible verses on their Pride Night caps, and then the 4th wore an entirely different hat, the regular game day hat, during the game Friday against the Cubs. Starter Landon Roop, relief pitchers JT Brubaker and Ryan Walker, including the inscription Genesis 9:12-16, which declares the rainbow is a sign of promise and not tranny Marxism. Pitcher Sam Henches opted to just wear the standard cap as well. MLB writing that the writing on the caps violates our rules and consistent with normal practice. We have warned the players about future violations. Major League Baseball taking the wrong side on this, forcing a ridiculous agenda on their players, threatening them when they don't follow suit. Bad look. All right, I think the Knicks have been partying too hard. Up next.
Closed captioning brought to you by MagnaLife Pain and Inflammation Relief Roll-On.
Your muscle and joint inflammation is real. Here's what real customers are saying about MagnaLife Pain and Inflammation Relief Roll-On. It worked great.
Available at your local retailer.
Spring. Things out here have gotten a little too comfortable. It's time to run it. Run it until the grass becomes a lawn. Until the hedges duck for cover. Then run it again. Right now, get up to $50 off select AK battery tool sets. Steel.
Did you know about 1 in 3 people with plaque psoriasis may also develop psoriatic arthritis? With fewer symptoms from moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, where would you go? Imagine being a million miles away. With Tremfya, clearer skin is possible. And for adults with active psoriatic arthritis, Tremfya goes beyond the skin. Less joint pain, stiffness, and swelling is possible. And Tremfya is the first and only treatment of its kind proven to help stop further joint damage. Serious allergic reactions, increased risk of infections, or lower ability to fight them, and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or need a vaccine. Imagine being a million miles away. Ask your doctor about Tremfya.
Look, if you're an executive, this shirt is a must-have in your closet. I was tired of floppy collars and shirts with sweat stains, so I got this shirt I saw on TV, and now I don't have to worry. I got it shipped in no time, and I switched from regular polos to this immediately. The brand is called Collars & Co. They make a regular stretchy golf shirt, but the top has a firm collar on it. I got rid of so many problems by upgrading to this. No dry cleaning needed anymore. I'm free from uncomfortable long sleeves, and the collars stay stiff all day.
Get a free Cloud Cotton Quarter Zip with your order this Father's Day only at collarsandco.com.
Finally tonight, I think the Knicks are partying a bit too hard after their first finals win in 53 years. Starter OG Anunoby going viral after this appearance on ABC's Good Morning America.
Talk about the difference Coach Brown made and how he brought you all together.
He's been great. He's been great. Mike's been great.
Trying to talk to the guy right there on the left in the blue shirt. He's just catatonic, like he's not even there. I mean, Finnerty, I don't know. Did he smoke a joint? I mean, they said maybe he was up for 2 days.
No,
I
think it's a combination.
Gone.
Kind of reminds me of Joe Biden. We dealt with that for 4 years, and the media wouldn't say anything about it. Now you got George Steffi laughing on set there. Honestly, though, 2 days of partying, I always wonder how these guys even make it to these interviews. All right, you'd be having a good time, too. You just won the championship. Enjoy.
If I made that kind of money, it would be very hard for me to responsibly contain my lifestyle.
I agree. I agree. Joe Biden.
That's why I don't make that much money.
Yet. Not yet.
I wouldn't be alive.
Not yet. Good things are coming. All right, Rob, we'll do it again tomorrow. Right. Finnerty starts right now.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.